Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Maddie and today we're talking about watering. Yes, bit of a controversial topic, so I'm just going to share my experience and what I know. So don't come for me if you disagree with something, because this is my opinion and nothing more. So get out your water guys, we're about to get wet. So I've got 5 different things I'm going to go over today. The first being understanding the importance of watering, knowing how to observe your plant rather than sticking to a schedule, understanding all the different factors that come into play that can affect the frequency of watering your plants, how to water your plants, and also things to avoid when it comes to watering your plants. So firstly, understanding the importance of water. So plants need 3 things to survive. They need water, they need light, and they need carbon dioxide. And a way that a plant uses these 3 things is called the process of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the cycle of plants and how they use these things to create energy. The energy from the sun, the water, the minerals, and the carbon dioxide. And the plant uses those things to produce glucose/sugar, which is the energy/food for plants. Yummy! So now that we've covered photosynthesis, I will move on to knowing how to observe your plant and its soil rather than sticking to a schedule. So the first thing you want to do is check the plants for signs that it needs water. And this can be many different things depending on the type of plant that you have. So some signs to look out for are wrinkling, curling, soft limp leaves, or drooping of the entire plant. So the next thing you want to do is to check your soil and determine whether it is dry, whether it is partially dry, or if it's still moist. And you can do that by using a moisture meter tool, but I prefer to just use the old finger method. And all you have to do is just pop your finger down into the soil, and putting it down far enough that you can still feel the bottom of the soil mixture, because sometimes the top 2 inches are dry, but that doesn't necessarily mean underneath is dry. So you hear a lot of people say, if the top 2 inches are dry, to water it. It's not necessarily always the case. So make sure that you're checking as far in as you possibly can, just to see whether the bottom is still wet. Because if you go and put water on top of that, you're possibly going to be overwatering, and then that can cause root rot. Keeping in mind the type of plant that you're assessing and its individual needs as well. The next thing I have here is all the different factors that come into play when it comes to watering your plants and how they affect the frequency of watering. So the first thing is the type of plant. So watering a succulent, for example, is going to be much different to watering one of these guys, which is a more moisture loving plant. Another thing is the size of the plants. So for example, a smaller plant is going to use up a lot less water than a larger plant is. Another thing you want to think of also is the size of the pot that it's in. So for instance, if you have a plant in a smaller pot, it's not going to need as much water as it is in a larger pot. And for instance, if you have a smaller plant that's in a large pot, larger than it probably should, you don't want to saturate all of the soil, because that plant is not going to need that much water. And another thing about pots is the type of pot. So for instance, if you have terracotta are going to draw up the moisture, whereas if you have a glazed pot, which isn't going to draw up the moisture. So that's another thing that you have to take into consideration as well. Another thing is the potting medium. So whether you have a very well draining bark mix, or whether you have a more peat sort of moisture holding mix as well. So the watering is going to be completely different in each of these, and I'll have an example up here for you guys as well, just to show you the difference in watering between the 2 different types of soil mixtures. Another thing is the intensity and the duration of light. So if you have 2 of the same plant, for example, if one of them is further back from the window, sort of getting more of a medium light, compared to if you had the same plant against a window, which gets a lot of bright indirect light, you're going to find that you're going to be watering the one in the window more than the one further back, because obviously the more sun a plant is getting, the more water it's going to take up. So if you're watering the plant that's further back the same as the one at the window, you're probably going to find that the one further back isn't going to be as happy, because it's not needing as much water as the one near the window, because it's not getting the same amount and duration of sun. Also, temperature and humidity are another thing as well. If you find that your house is pretty warm, there's a good chance that the water consumption is going to be more than if you find that your house is a lot colder. So you'll find that you probably water more in summer and less frequently in winter because of that factor. And another thing is if you have humidity in your home, say if you've got one of these guys, you'll find you don't have to water as much because there's a lot of humidity, a lot of moisture in the air, and the plant is taking that in. Another thing is the speed of growth. If a plant is growing fairly rapidly, there's probably a chance that it's taking up a lot of water as well. Whereas if you have a plant that's not growing as fast, it's probably not going to be taking up as much water as the plant that is growing rapidly. And another thing is the season of year. So obviously we're in spring right now and we're getting like 30 to 40 degree days, and it's only spring, so I can only imagine what summer's going to be like. And obviously in winter it's a lot colder, so you're more likely going to be cutting back on watering in the winter season. So those are a few factors to keep in mind when it comes to watering. So moving on from that, the next thing is how to water. So this is the kind of thing where you've got to work out what type of plants you have and how they prefer to be watered. So the first thing I want to note here is that you want to use a good quality water, especially with your more sensitive plants. These guys are very prone to getting browning. Depending where you live, your tap water quality might not be the best, and I've noticed that here our tap water isn't very good. A lot of my more sensitive plants like this guy have got browning. But since giving them distilled water, I've found that they're a lot happier. The next thing I have here is aeration. Now, you don't have to do this if you've got a really airy mixture, but it's good to do it every now and again just to break up any soil that's compacted, because you don't want your soil to be compacted because there's going to be a lot of stagnant water sitting there, and that's what you don't want. So just using like a chopstick or even your moisture meter, you just want to go around and poke holes into the soil, just so that when you do water as well, the water is going to be evenly distributed throughout the soil because you've gone through and aerated it. It's a good thing to do because in nature, plants are aerated by earthworms, so the earthworms will go through and dig their little holes. So it's kind of a similar thing. It's a good thing to do. So if you're top watering, what you want to do is you want to go in a clockwise motion, going round and round. That way that the water is evenly distributed throughout the whole soil mixture. And you want to let at least 10 to 20% of that water run through your drainage holes. That way you know you've got full saturation. Or for example, if you're bottom watering, because there are plants that do prefer bottom watering and some that don't like getting any water on their leaves. So to avoid this, it's good to bottom water. So what you want to do is you just want to fill up your saucer with water and let your plant sit for a few hours so that it completely draws up what it needs. And then once you've left it for a few hours, then you can empty out the saucer just so that the plant isn't sitting in water, because that can cause root rot if the plant takes up more water than it actually needs. So plants like begonias, for example, they don't appreciate moisture on their leaves, which I learned the hard way. And you guys would know that if you've seen my previous videos, so check it out. Right, so that is a few tips on how to water your plants. I want to move on now to things to avoid when it comes to watering your plants. So the first thing I have here is unevenly distributing water. So if you're top watering, for example, and you're only watering one side of the plant, only that side of the plant is going to get water. Most likely this side probably won't. So you can't really tell what the root ball is like underneath the soil because you don't have x-ray vision, and if you do, I'm jealous. If you were to unevenly water your plant, more than likely if there's roots over this side, they're not going to be getting the water that they need, and that's not a good thing. So make sure to evenly water the top so that you know that it's going through the whole pot. The next thing I have noted here is letting your plant sit in stagnant water. And you don't want to do this because if your plant is sitting in water, you're going to get root rot and your plant's going to die. And we don't want that. We want your plant to live. So don't let it sit in water. Okay? Okay. Unless obviously it's a plant that likes to sit in water, then by all means, go ahead. You do you. The next thing I have here is watering when the plant is still wet. No. So if the soil is still wet, leave it alone. Don't water it again. Even if it's been a week and I water on Wednesdays, don't. Your plant will not like you for it. It's just going to end up a soggy wet mess, and you're going to lose your plant from root rot. So if the soil is wet, leave it alone for a few more days. Check it again in a few more days. If it's still wet, leave it alone. So the next thing is using bad quality water. As I said before, bad quality water ends up in browning. Use good quality water, happy plants. Another thing as well, when you do water your plants, try to make sure that the water is lukewarm, because if you're using really cold water, as soon as that water hits the root ball, it can send the roots into shock, and that can damage the plants. And lastly is underwatering. What you don't want to do is give your plant a tiny sip, because if you've gone for a run and you're really thirsty and you just give yourself a couple of drops, you're still thirsty. It's the same thing. Give your plants a good drink. Don't be afraid to really saturate the water. Alright, so that's it for this video, guys. I hope you found it helpful in some way. Like I said at the start, this is just my experience and what I find works for me and my plants. So if you have any questions at all, feel free to drop a comment below, or you can also add me on Instagram at antsinmyplants_. And I hope you can take something from today and apply it to how you water your plants. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up. I would appreciate it so much. Head on over to my channel and subscribe so you don't miss out on any videos that I bring out in the future. And until then, I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys. All right, guys, I got the water. Let's get wet.